Welcome back to another What the Tech video, where we answer your tech questions. Coming at you just like Cleopatra. This is the 2021 update to my previous video, to answer the question of, what is the best cloud storage for 2021? So if you're wondering which cloud storage service you should be signing up for, be that Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, Apple iCloud, Box, or Mega, then we'll be answering that exact question right now. And if you're not already aware, late last year Google announced some pretty significant updates to their cloud storage, essentially removing their unlimited storage options and increasing the price for cloud storage. So if you've seen that and wondering what you should be doing next, then again, stick around. Firstly, if you are new around here, hi, my name is Pete Matheson, and my background is in IT. I run my own IT business for the last pretty much decade. I sold that business in March 2020, and I'm now coaching other IT business owners. So I do know my way around cloud services and particularly cloud storage. And if this is your first time here, then welcome. Great to have you here. And if you are interested in more videos around tech and investing and running your own business, then please consider subscribing for more. Oh, and also on that side note, a huge thank you to Sondela Consulting, Frank McPoyle, Domus Araminas, and Renia Labouchan, if hopefully I pronounced your names right, who recently clicked the join button underneath this video. Super grateful for your support and looking forward to chatting with you more in the comments below. Whilst you are watching, make sure to let us know which cloud storage you're considering or perhaps using right now. Let me know if I've not covered one and I'll try and include that in the next one. And if you also have any technical questions, then I will do my best to respond to each and every single comment in the comments below. And to prevent this video going on for hours and hours, we're going to take a look at the offerings from Google, Microsoft, Apple, Dropbox, Box, and also Mega, because I had quite a few comments on the last one asking me to cover them. So here you go. And what I'll do is I will leave links down below in the description of this video for all of the cloud providers that I'm talking about. Just a very quick note here, I won't be covering Amazon AWS or Google Cloud Platform, which are generally meant for the more enterprise or at least the more techies amongst us. So just to cover off those for those who are wondering why I'm not including them. Perhaps again, comment below if you think I should be doing a separate video to compare against those, and I'll see what I can come up with. But this video is already going to be far too long for most people, so anyway, in terms of the key areas we'll be covering, we're going to look at pricing, user experience, sharing, backup and retention, data location or sovereignty, and reliability, because, well, 2020 was the year to test the reliability for all of these services, right? So after you've hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, let's all talk about the first contender today, and that is Microsoft OneDrive. Microsoft OneDrive is both a business and consumer product, with Microsoft bundling OneDrive into pretty much all of their online plans. When it comes to pricing, well, nothing really changed here at all. For personal, you still get 5 gig for free. You can upgrade to 100 gig for $1.99 or £1.99, or pay $69.99 or £59.99 per year for 1 terabyte. Over in the business world, you get a 1 terabyte OneDrive with most of the paid for plans. And since you may already be subscribed to Microsoft 365 for work or for school, then you already have this at no additional cost. When it comes to user experience, it runs on pretty much anything, including the new Apple M1 range of processors. Stick with me on this one. Now, I did have quite a few comments on my last video, which if you're interested in going back in time, you can watch up here and down below, which were saying that OneDrive is crap and never works, it crashes, it slows, and honestly I've never had this issue, or at least not recently. I mean, years and years ago, yeah, I mean, OneDrive was a pile of turds. But today it's been solid both on Windows and on Mac for me, and on mobile for everything. Now, one area I didn't cover before, and requested by many of those in the same comments, is block level uploads. Now, what are block level uploads? With block level uploads, only the changes made to a file need to be uploaded. For example, if you work on, say, like a large file and make a tiny change, well, that change will get uploaded to the cloud, because without block level updates, then it will have to upload that entire large file again. And the answer to this question in OneDrive's case is yes, OneDrive does do block level uploads on all file types, something which they introduced around, I think it was April last year. So if you are working on a file, you hit save, then only those changes are getting synced to OneDrive. A few further points to mention here is you do have one single client to install that works for both personal and business accounts, and you can sign into multiple accounts without any issues in my experience. They also have a files on demand feature, which is enabled by default, which only downloads files that you have recently accessed to save space on your machine. For those business customers, it's also integrated with all of the Microsoft 365 suite, so you can get to all of your files from any of the multitude of the 365 applications. Multiple people can work on the same files at the same time and see edits live if you work in browser. And platforms like Microsoft Power Automate can be used to totally automate the creation and movement of files. A few kind of issues to mention. OneDrive does have a maximum file size limit of, well, it's currently 100 gig, but by the end of March 2021, they should have increased this to 250 gig, which, to be honest, fixes one of my biggest issues and biggest complaints with this platform, because last time I reviewed this, they had a limit of 15 gig, which is just impossible. I mean, particularly when you're working with video files like this. When it comes to sharing, and as you'd expect, you can share the files and folders with anybody, internal, external, and yes, those without a Microsoft account can even edit the files. You can set dates for when this access expires, and you can also set a password to access that, which is pretty neat for security. And then from a backups perspective, OneDrive is not a backup for your files. OneDrive is not backed up itself, and Microsoft 365 is not backed up. Please pay attention to this. If you're storing valuable files in OneDrive, and then you must make sure it's backed up, certainly for business. Though most for people using it for personal items, you are probably relatively safe, but do take that with a pinch of salt, as there's still a chance you might lose everything in your OneDrive. Microsoft does have resiliency and redundancy. If one of the data center blows up, then your data will be served from another copy in another location. But if you delete some files and then don't realize for, say 6 months, there is little to nothing anybody can do if you haven't backed up elsewhere. Microsoft even state it in their terms and conditions when you sign up that you must find a third-party backup tool to back up your data. For data sovereignty, you can check where your data is stored by going to the Office 365 Admin Center, go to Settings, Org Settings, Organization Profile, Data Location. But generally speaking, your data will typically be stored in the country that you sign up from. And over into reliability. Well, 2020 was really the year just to test how good and reliable all of these services were, right? And to be honest, I don't think Microsoft fared that well. To give each company a fair fight here, I've basically just done a Google News search for outages to see what comes up, as well as then dug into the status pages for each of those services to try and marry up some of those outages. And for Microsoft, 2020 most definitely was not a great year. January 2021, outage. December 2020, Office 365, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, all down. November 2020, Outlook.com, OneDrive, and Xbox services, all offline. October 2020, offline. In fact, an outage happened 3 times in 10 days. And I don't really think I need to go on because, well, that history. And so recently too is just abysmal from such a large company such as Microsoft. You'd think they would have figured this out by now, surely. But hey, anyway, next up, let's talk Google. So in the everything Google world, there are a ton of changes to talk about. And yes, we still have the confusion over the products. Google Cloud Storage is called Google Drive. However, they still have 3 different clients to download. For mobile, you download Google Drive, nice and simple. But on desktop, for personal users, it's Google Backup and Sync. But for business users, you can either use Backup and Sync or something called Google File Stream. For all of these, you still get into it through a web browser by going to drive.google.com. And if you download the wrong client and try and sign in, it doesn't tell you you're in the wrong client. Just makes no sense. Anyway, personal bugbear aside, onto pricing. Much like Microsoft, there are 2 tiers of pricing, consumer and business. Consumer pricing falls under something called Google One, and then business is called Google Workspace, which used to be called G Suite. For most of us, using Google One, we are talking about 15 gig for free, 100 gig for $2 or £1.59 per month, 200 gig for $3 or £2.49, 2 terabytes for $10 or $7.99. And they also do some higher tiers for tens of terabytes. But over on Google Workspace and using their introductory pricing, 30 gig for $6 or £4.14, 2 terabytes for $12 or £8.28, 5 terabytes for $18 or £13.80. Or if you desperately need unlimited storage on Google, this is something they changed last year, then you now have to upgrade to their Google Workspace Enterprise plans, which is $20 or £18.36 per month. Now, I'm not going to go into specifics here, but if you do want to know more about Google Workspace and all of those changes, then I recommend watching this video, which is all about those changes. Back to looking at user experience, and I think Google are both the strongest and kind of the weakest. They have by far the best client, in my opinion, of all the ones we've reviewed so far. So apply a pinch of salt here, as I'm very much living in, Apple fanboy world. So my opinion is probably skewed, though I have just bought a Google Pixel 4. And I'm trying to switch to this for a couple of weeks. So if you want to laugh at an Apple fanboy trying to switch to Android, then subscribe to the channel for more updates. But anyway, you have to first decide which client you want to use because of all that confusion. Google Drive, Backup and Sync, FileStream. For those of you using FileStream and the new M1 Silicon processors, you are fresh out of luck right now. It's not supported, it won't work, and there's no official word from Google on when it will actually be available. I've seen rumours it will be next month, but also seen rumours that it's going to be like the last quarter of this year. So time will tell there.
A few moments later.
Morning, Future Pete here. Literally hours after I filmed that video, there have been two new announcements from Google. Firstly, Google Drive for Desktop, which is Drive FileStream's new name, which kind of makes sense, finally, I think, after what, a decade of just not naming it properly, will support Apple M1 devices when version 47 is released in April. There you go. Back to the other Pete that doesn't know what he's talking about because Google keep changing it. The workaround for that, for now, is to use Backup and Sync, which does work, but providing you can install it, both Google FileStream and Backup and Sync are by far one of the most reliable apps I've used. I don't recall any times when the sync has jammed up or crashed or just anything. And that includes when I'm uploading hundreds of gigs worth of data or tens of thousands of files. So just briefly, the differences here: Google FileStream, which is for business only, essentially just mounts your Google Drive folder to your computer and then just kind of downloads the files that you access, much like OneDrive's Files on Demand features, whereas Backup and Sync will sync selected folders to your computer, and you can also use it to back up, say, your desktop, your downloads, and other folders on your computer, using it as some kind of backup. More on that in a sec. And when it comes to block level uploads, which allows you to work on larger files and then only upload the small changes instead of having to upload the whole large file again, no, Google does not do this. So if you do need that feature, then right now you need to look at one of the other contenders, which is a real shame. If Google had those block level updates, it would quite possibly have won this whole competition, I think, possibly. When it comes to sharing, you can share internally and share it externally, including letting people who don't have their own Google accounts edit those documents that you share, which is pretty good. And as far as backups go, no, once again, the same story as Microsoft. Google Drive is not backed up. If you are a Google Workspace user, they guarantee they can survive the loss of an entire data center, but outside of that, they do have a short window of 25 to 30 days for being able to recover any accidentally deleted files. If you aren't a Google business user, then Google suggests you contact them so they can help you find your files, which I think basically means that they want to kind of break the news to you in person, since it's not backed up. Over now to data sovereignty, and to start with, Google doesn't provide any facility to choose or determine where your actual data is located. They do state that their data is replicated throughout multiple locations for resiliency, so they're not as transparent as Microsoft. But just a reminder here that both Microsoft and Google's offerings are fully compliant with GDPR, PCI compliance, healthcare, and all those other regulations. Of course, with that said, you'd be best to double check any specifics if you need to be legally compliant, of course. And finally, onto reliability. And I mean, my God, you don't have to really try hard to beat Microsoft in terms of uptime now, right? Except in December 2020, there was slight hiccup for Google, which knocked out pretty much every Google service, including YouTube and other Google services, in its entirety for almost an hour, I mean, it's not that bad, to be fair, is it? It's nice to switch off from time to time. There was also an outage reported in the US only in September 2020, which lasted for a number of hours. Another one in August, a small one in March 2020, one again in January 2020. But I mean, it's not perfect for sure, but definitely better than Microsoft when we were looking at for pure reliability. And not to make excuses for Microsoft or Google, but we all know that 2020 was a pretty unique year. And between Google and Microsoft, they pretty much run every business, every school, every personal inbox for almost everybody in the world. So whilst I can at times be super hard on them for, everyone else waving their hands in the air with how shoddy their services have been at times, they've also had to deal with this global pandemic, scaling their systems at a rate that has not been seen before. And no, I will not use that word.
Unprecedented.
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 Unprecedented. Unprecedented.
Unprecedented.
So whilst I can be hard on them for their outages, I hope that my 2022 cloud storage review will be a little bit quieter in terms of overall outages. And with that said, let's move on to the next cloud provider, that is Apple iCloud. Now, Apple iCloud is something which will only really appeal to Apple users. I like to think that's kind of fairly obvious. It's 200 gig for $2.99 or $2.49 per month, 2 terabytes for $9.99 or £6.99. And user experience is pretty flawless. I mean, providing, of course, that you're on an Apple device, of course. It seamlessly integrates with everything that's in the Apple ecosystem, photos, videos, music, backing up your mobile devices, and just all your files and folders too. I can't comment just yet on comparing this with Google Drive and Android integration, but if you are interested, then do subscribe to this channel, as I've got this Android mobile phone thing here, Google Pixel phone, after being 100% iPhone for literally the last decade. So that's going to be an interesting one to do. Back to Apple, and again, credit where credit's due. The integration is just flawless. You can literally pick up any device and your data is there, just spot on Apple. Some limitations, in general, block level sync is not offered, so any changes to large files will require that entire file to be uploaded again. And also there is a file size limit of 50 gig, so for those of you storing large files or video files or media files, this one probably isn't for you. When it comes to backups, it is impossible to reliably and automatically back up your files on iCloud. Apple also hold no information on any retention periods for how long they'll keep your deleted items, which basically gives you little to no option to recover anything. Oh, and also from a data location perspective, you will have no clear idea where your data is. Actually, in a nutshell, it's stored on other cloud services such as Amazon AWS and Google Cloud. You cannot tell if your data is held in a specific location, which leads me on to reliability. And because iCloud sits on top of other cloud platforms, it kind of makes an interesting one. At the time of shooting this video, there was a report 3 weeks ago, right at the beginning of January, of an outage. Another outage in November 2020, one in September 2020, August, July, another in June, which sounds quite bad, but there wasn't anything earlier than that. And I will say that these outages, whilst they were reported via like Google News, often affected a smaller subset of users and often affected just, say, access to iCloud Calendar instead of those outages, that actually take out the actual storage. So do take those outages with a bit of pinch of salt, and because they're definitely not as dramatic as the outages from the likes of Google and Microsoft last year. Anyway, onwards to Dropbox. Pricing here starts from free for just 2 gig, $9.99 or £7.99 for 2 terabytes, and $19.99 or £13.99 for 2 terabytes of shared family storage with 6 users included. So interesting to see a family option there. For business, then you're looking at a single user with up to 3 terabytes at £16.58 per month. And then for teams, you have an option of $12.50 or £10 per user per month for a minimum of 3 users and 5 terabytes of space, or $20, £15 for 3 users, but this time with unlimited space. All of those prices are based on paying annually, so if you want to just pay monthly, then it will cost you another 15-20% on top of those. Now, user experience it's really great. Again, I've had no issues with any uploads or downloads or crashing or slowdowns, nothing over the years. And yes, Dropbox also has block level uploads. It also has a smart sync function which downloads only those files you need and stores those locally, which is available on all their paid for plans. Sharing works well as most of the other apps, but if you want to share a folder, then every person will need a Dropbox account, even if it's just the free version. And then shared links are view only. So if you want the best experience, it's basically best to make sure both sides have that free Dropbox account. Over onto backup and recovery, and we finally have a contender. Any of the paid accounts, Dropbox gives you 30 days actual real-life backups and version history, with the business plans also giving you 180 days. So this is by far the best solution if you are looking for someone to make sure your data is backed up and they're actually backing it up as part of what you're paying them. So maybe Microsoft or Google could take a leaf out of Dropbox books. One thing to note here is that on the free tier, the website states you can get 30 days file recovery and version history, which is fantastic because it's free, but you then can't recover from ransomware or mass deletion using their rewind feature. But to be honest, it's free and you're still getting 30 days backups. So fantastic. When it comes to where Dropbox stores your data, the US, and sometimes in Germany, Australia, Japan, sometimes. But if you are a business enterprise user, then you can request to store your data in Europe only to meet those pesky GDPR regulations. And then we come on to reliability, that old pesky reliability thing. The thing that's got Microsoft, Google, potentially Apple all weak at the knees. And for Dropbox, well, nothing, literally nothing. I've searched Google News for Dropbox outage, nothing. One article from 2014 did come up, but I couldn't see a single report of a newsworthy outage in 2020, so damn, incredibly good going right there. Now, checking their own website status pages, it does show a minor blip of 10 minutes in December, a minor outage of less than 30 minutes in August, and then less than 15 minutes in March, so I'd say that's pretty strong right there. And that takes us over to a new one for this review video, and that is Box. Pricing for Box starts at free for 10 gig, and then £8 for 100 gig for the personal plans. And over in business land, we're talking £4 for 100 gig and a ridiculously cheap £12 for unlimited, but with a minimum of 3 users needed for all of those business plans. They also have some higher tiers which give you some more options and API calls, file version history, integration and more enterprisey stuff. And again, just for those business plans, those are annual prices, so add 25% if you want to pay monthly. For user experience, what about block level uploads? Nope, you do not get that with Box. And Box also has some pretty poor upload limits when it comes to file size, in all honesty. On the free personal plan, no files larger than 250 megabytes. On Personal Pro, that's increased to 5 gig. Even over to their business plans, right up to their biggest enterprise tiers, the biggest file you can upload is just 5 gig. So if you want to use Box, then you have to be pretty confident that you're never going to need to store anything larger than 5 gig, which in today's world could be a 12-minute video shot on an iPhone at its high settings, a film, CAD drawings, and basically anything that involves graphic design or creative media. Sharing is a familiar likeness to Dropbox. You can share externally, but everyone will need at least the free Dropbox account to use it. And when it comes to backups, Box takes a different and kind of interesting approach. You get version history with all of their plans, and there are, as far as I can tell, no time limits. So instead of getting, say, 30 days worth of backup, you get anywhere from 1 to 100 versions, which I have to applaud if that is correct. It's great and actually beats all of the other providers' recovery options, well, so far. Answering that question once more of where does Box store your data, it's again good news.
Good news, everyone!
For users in Europe, Asia, Canada, or Australia, they give you the option to store data in your local area. That's a check in the that'll do pig box right there.
That'll do.
For reliability, and when trying to search for such a simple name like Box on Google, it's pretty much impossible to find anything accurate. But looking at their own status pages, we did have an outage in January 2021 for half an hour, October 2020 for 7 hours, and that's pretty much it for major outages. Again, I'd say that's pretty respectable. Nothing like Google or Microsoft. But then again, I doubt Box have seen quite the scale of additional users that Microsoft and Google have had to deal with recently. But overall, if you can live with the file size limits of Box and that it doesn't have block level sync, this looks like it could be a good option for affordable storage solution. Would I pick it over Dropbox? Probably not, in all honesty, but it's an option still. Which brings us to our final contestant tonight, which goes to Mega, as I was just inundated with comments on my last video to include that in my next review. For pricing with Mega, we are talking $4.99 per month for 400 gig of storage, $9.99 for 2 terabytes, $19.99 for 8 terabytes, and then $29.99 for 16 terabytes. And all of that pricing is in euros because, well, that's just all they bill in. And another interesting concept here, which I haven't seen for quite a while now, is caps on transferred data. For example, on the 400 gig storage tier, you can transfer 1 terabyte of data per month. On the 2 terabyte, then you get 2 terabytes data transfer and so forth. Is it a problem? Probably not for most people, but the fact they have a cap would then seem to indicate it was a problem for them at some point. Based on my understanding of Mega and some nifty Googling, I believe Mega has historically been used to help people share like pirated films and TV and music. So it would be a case that maybe someone would just basically use Mega to host a very, very cheap unlimited download service, thus the caps, which then makes perfect sense. Privacy is one worth covering off here, as Mega has privacy and security at the forefront of all of its marketing and all over the website. With Mega, your data is encrypted on your device, and Mega has no way to decrypt it, though it's worth mentioning that I can't find any third-party audits or tests to really test this security and encryption. But what I did here is I delved deep into some Reddit discussions where Mega themselves got involved in the discussion and claimed they don't need an independent audit because when they do share, what they do share is the full source code of the client apps. So people can really look at the code themselves and see how it's dealing with all those privacy concerns. In their own security paper, Mega states they are a secure cloud storage and communication platform with user-controlled end-to-end encryption. End-to-end encryption means that no intermediary, not even Mega, has access to the user's encryption keys, therefore the data stored. Mega is currently the only major cloud storage provider supporting browser access to end-to-end encrypted cloud storage. So from a security perspective, this looks like a really strong contender, and they also seem to be pretty active on their own subreddit and willing to answer questions and get stuck into discussions, which I think is just great to see when these large businesses invest time to really talk to their customers. A quick mention around those block level uploads, which Mega doesn't offer, so any small changes to large files will require the whole file to be re-uploaded. Possibly only really an issue for you if you're constantly working on those, those large files and making small changes quite often, maybe with a poor internet connection. From a sharing perspective, you can share with anybody, though if you do want them to have any form of edit permissions, then they will need their own Mega account. Over onto backup and retention. There's no clear information I can see about the data specifically being backed up, but they do have file versioning, which stores older copies of files, though again, no real information on how many versions or for how long. When talking about where Mega stores all of your data, it is in Europe or in other countries which will satisfy your GDPR requirements. Though interestingly, none of your files are stored in or made available from the US. Other than that, and as I'm not a Mega user myself, it's near impossible to find any reliable information. Searching for Mega outage, of course, just brings up loads of posts about the Mega outages of 2020. And Mega don't have their own status page where you can see historic information, but I couldn't see any reported issues, so maybe take that with a pinch of salt. So in summary, for me, for Mega, it's actually a kind of an interesting service with a very different approach to the big players in the market. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give Mega a proper and thorough test over the next few weeks, possibly months, and when I'm ready, I will post a full review on this channel. So do make sure you're subscribed for when that one goes live. Phew! Ooh, wasn't that a long video? Let's just run through them, and I'll be sure to include links to sign up to each of the services in the description below, some of which I might earn a small commission on, as a bit of a thank you for boring you to death with this long old video, but it won't cost you anything more, and in some cases I might actually be able to try and find like a discounted link, so I'll try and find those and include them in the links below. So, summary. If you already have a Microsoft 365 account for work, or you're using Google Workspace for work, then both of these come with some fantastic storage options. And from a price perspective, then you're just using the best built-in storage, which is great for both of those products, providing you can live with the outages we've seen across 2020. If you are fully in the Apple ecosystem, then iCloud is a no-brainer for things like files and photos, but I still wouldn't choose to put all of my documents on their systems, as the features you get with others are just so much better. For a pure storage versus cost versus performance, then something like Dropbox really does become attractive. You know, it's feature rich with block level uploads and reasonably affordable too. If you are security conscious, then perhaps take a look at Mega. Again, I'll try and get a full review of that in a separate video soon, so definitely subscribe for that one. Box, personally, I can't really see myself recommending any cloud storage provider that has a 5 gig cap on files, and that's even on their higher tiers. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to take a pass at Box. But again, each their own. If there's something you've heard that takes your fancy with Box, then of course, check it out. Just be aware of those limitations from the get-go. For me, personally, I use a mixture of Google Drive, OneDrive, and Apple iCloud because I'm all about them apples. And from my own experience, they are all reliable. I've not personally been affected by any of the outages, except that half-an-hour Google Drive blip, which I can kind of excuse. But I just don't see any particular issue around Dropbox. I just have no use for like a fourth cloud storage product, which for me then pushes Box and Mega off of my particular needs, as my Google and Microsoft accounts are used for more than just storage, so it wouldn't make sense for me to then go and pay like yet another subscription fee for a separate storage plan when it's already included in my Google Drive and my 365 account. But your case might be completely different, and I definitely wouldn't discount those options. Like I said, review coming on Mega, as that one does genuinely intrigue me more. And that pretty much wraps up here. If you like this video, then why not check out this one where I talk about the changes to Google Workspace. Or if you're thinking about security, then check out this one, which is where I talk about the best password managers to use. Subscribe to the channel to catch those videos around Mega and other tech things. Give the video a thumbs up if you did, or if you didn't, well, I'm gonna go and cut my own hair now because, well, lockdown 2021. So I'm gonna stop talking. See ya.